I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Thank you all for joining us. Like I mentioned earlier, my name is Taylor Brock, and I am a member of the MAM Fund Development Team. And we are so excited to have y'all here today to join us for our very first Food for Thought Lunch and Learn series. This is something new that we're giving to the community as a way for you to be able to join us virtually and learn about what's going on in MAM. Maybe you're familiar with what we're doing and you want to have updates on some of the program areas, or maybe you just heard about us from a friend and you decided to join us today. So thank you for being here. We will kick this off in a few minutes. And one thing I will ask is that if you could keep yourself muted so we have no background noise. And then if you have really great questions, which I really hope that you do, if you'll go ahead and put them in the chat, we will get to the questions at the end once Sonja is done speaking. So we can kind of gather them all together. Some of you may have similar questions. There may be some that are a little bit different, but then we will do all of our questions at the end. And thank you again for joining us. And today we're so excited for our first one that we have our president and CEO, Sonja Gee, who is going to be our wonderful speaker today. And I will pass it over to Sonja so that she can share all of the wonderful information with y'all. And thanks again for joining us.
Thanks so much, Taylor. Taylor, would you mind activating so I can share my screen and use my presentation? It's telling me I can't share my screen. Well, thanks. Really appreciate each of you joining us today. I hope you also brought your lunch with you. The idea is this is a lunch and learn, so it's our brown sack in the new virtual world. And I prepared a little presentation today. I want to talk about MAM, and the idea is, as we launch into this series, every 2 months we're going to be here available to share about the different programs and services that MAM has made available to our community. And so I thought I'd give a little bit of an overview today of MAM and not get into the nitty-gritty of each of our programs, but really talk more about what makes MAM MAM, a little bit about our history, a little bit about our core values, and a little bit of the vision of the impact that we see ourselves not only making today, but how we see ourselves growing into the future. So while Taylor is working on that technical piece of it, I'll start out just by sharing a little tidbit about myself. I'm a native Houstonian. I grew up actually not terribly far away from MAM itself in the West Chase area. So right across the corner from where our West Campus is right now. And both my parents are immigrants, and they both came, with very little resources. And it's been incredible to see how having the opportunities, the support of people have allowed them to really grow into new opportunities here in Houston. So are we?
It's all grayed out, so I'm trying my best to figure this out, but it's not letting me pass it over to you. So,
okay, I think there we go.
Oh, thank goodness. Sorry about that.
Great. So a little bit of my personal why and what I love about MAM is, my dad was one of the first Chinese immigrants in Texas. He came as a small child. And at the time, my grandparents ran one of the first Chinese restaurants in the Houston area. The Chinese community was tiny. I mean, it started out with a couple dozen people, then, a couple hundred eventually. And so when new folks would come over from China, often with very low skills, low education, it was really important that the community provided to them opportunities to engage, to assimilate, to learn, and to grow. So I hear stories about, at the time, Asians were considered non-white and unable to live in residential areas in Houston. And so for housing, they would have people stay like in the back room of warehouse of the grocery stores or of the restaurants, or whoever in the community had a space. People would learn language, they would learn how to navigate the school system and other things here. One thing that was really different about Texas than other states like Mississippi and Louisiana is that Asians were at the time allowed to access educational opportunities in the white schools. And so my family has always passed on the value that, because my dad was able to get a really great public education, it set him up, not just, in grade school, but going through and being one of the first 2 Asians at Rice University when it was free to really have a successful career in our community. And so my why and what I love about MAM is I really see that MAM continues to provide those types of opportunities to people in our community. And it's an honor and privilege to be able to be a part of that and to give back to other people the opportunities that I myself and my family have had. So This is a little map. So for those of you who don't know Veronica, she's our awesome communications manager and does great designs for us. And I got really excited. She put together these maps for me. This one shows the 17 zip code area that MAM serves. Now, when I say that, it's really, you know, the dedicated area where we provide direct assistance. Our service actually goes way beyond, and in some of our programs, we have people accessing services from the 4-county area. But it's primarily within this area and focused on this. And you can see, you know, we were formed originally by 13 different congregations. We now have 33 member congregations, and they're the core of the community that supports and, you know, makes MAM what it is today. You know, as we've continued to grow, we've also brought on dozens of corporations and local community support partners. But this is a great map to be able to see both the breadth of the service of MAM. If you can see, you know, the service area on this, it's actually, I think it's larger probably than the size of the inner loop of Houston. So it's a pretty substantial area. And there's over 500,000 residents in this area that we serve. The red star is our Blaylock, that's our main campus. The green star is our west campus out in Willcrest. And then the other stars, blue, yellow, and purple, are our workforce solutions where we have, and Acres Home Multi-Service Center. These are other locations where we co-locate and we provide services within the facilities of these other organizations. Anyway, oh yeah, I zoomed in because I wasn't sure you'd be able to see on the screen that first one. So anyway, so I have a couple food for thought questions for you all today. I don't know if they're rhetorical. I'd love for you to answer them. You know, I don't know if we got the chat going for that, but even just to help us all kind of think through. So one of the things I wanted to ask was, you know, often we hear people say, you know, that a goal of work of organizations like MAM is to really help people move on to self-sufficiency, right? And there are many members in our community that right now access and really have a need for different government benefits. And so my first question is, how long do you think it takes for a family who is engaged and interested, who wants to move forward in their life, they're looking for new opportunities, to move from a place of dependence where they are accessing government support or support from organizations like a MAM, to move on to a place where they truly are self-sufficient. And self-sufficient doesn't mean that like you'll never have a need to ask anything for anybody, but by and large, your needs are met by the income that you're able to generate within your household. Oops. So very often when I've done these questions in live groups, it's a little different, get a little more feedback back and forth with participants to hear, you know, we'll hear people say everything from 3 months to 5 months, 9 months to a year. Every once in a while, someone will say, I think it probably takes a year or two, you know, that's a long pathway. And so in reality, it's interesting to note that data shows it actually takes people from 5 to 7 years on average to make that move. And the reason that I start the presentation off in thinking about that is I think it's really important to see that, you know, from the time that MAM begun, which was almost 40 years ago by those 13 congregations, to today, there's been a significant change in our economy. There's been a significant change in the demographics of our community. And so one of the things that I, you know, think is wonderful about MAM is MAM continues to evolve, listen to the community, understand the needs, and develop the programs and services that are appropriate and supportive of the needs of the community at the time. And one thing that we see today, very different than the, I would say, original MAM, is that families that are coming to us, it's not that they are in necessarily just a situational crisis where they need a little bit of support and then can move back to self-sufficiency. In many cases, the families we serve are very hardworking families that in their household, they're holding, you know, multiple jobs, yet they struggle to get ahead and struggle to get to a place of self-sufficiency. And that's really where we see MAM really stepping in. So at MAM, we believe that stable families and supportive communities are the heart of making Houston a great place to work, play, and grow. And so we envision a Houston where every family has the opportunity to thrive. Now, we know today, unfortunately, that is not the case, and it's for multiple reasons, both for individual people and community and systemic reasons. But it's a vision that we care about deeply and that we work every day towards making a reality. So that is why MAM offers a range of programs to help families build skills, build resources, and also build the confidence that they need to reach their goals. And so something that's really important to us at MAM is that the people that we serve are actually the drivers of their own agendas. They're the ones that know what they want to accomplish in their life, and we're there to accompany them and provide the support they need to get there. In 2020, just to give you an idea of the impact of MAM, in 2020, we helped over 8,000 households, which was a total of more than 30,000 lives. I think it was like 32,000 lives or something. So it's a really big reach. This is actually, I don't know if Carlton's on the call on this chat or not. He's one of our amazing volunteers. This is a great story. This is Javier. Javier came to the US. He was from Venezuela, so he had really, really strong skills. He had a background in IT. But when he got here, he didn't speak English. He wasn't planning to come, so he hadn't built the skills for that. But because of the social situation in his country, he was forced to leave, got here, didn't speak English, didn't have a network of friends or, business contacts here. And so he was just working really hard just to get by. He was washing dishes. He was teaching swimming lessons. I mean, he kind of says whatever he needed to do just to pay the rent. One of the huge challenges that he faced was with no rental history, with no credit history. You can imagine how much even just to find a place to stay, and then how much he was having to pay for those things. These are some just the normal things that the families that we serve face. But I'm really excited to share with you that Javier got to know MAM because what he did know was, I need to learn English. This is, a key skill for me to step into some of the opportunities offered here in the US. So he came to our ESL program. Carlton's one of our volunteers there. And through that, he was connected to our employment services as well. And employment services helped him look at his resume, think about where to apply, and helped him work in that area. Well, just months after starting to work with our employment services, I don't know if you can see it in the slide here, but he got this letter from Amazon. I can kind of zoom in there. He had gotten a call, and he said at first, he at first thought it was actually a hoax, wasn't sure it was for real, but they called him in for an interview, and they flew him out for an interview. And long story short, he ended up getting an incredible job with a great salary and full benefits. And he was really choked up to say, from washing dishes and teaching classes and things, he's like, I don't know how I ever would have had this opportunity had it not been for MAM. And so that's some of the incredible work that MAM is able to do, and how we're able to impact people's lives because of the support of our donors, because of the work of our volunteers. All right, so what makes MAM MAM? Why are we different? What about us is special? And I would say there's 3 core things that really define who MAM is, right? It's our people, it's our philosophy of service, and I would say a philosophy of life, and it's our programs, and so I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about those different values. So the first one is the people. So our diverse team is built on really unique skills with a shared set of core values, goals and attitudes that shape our action. And so these are some of the values that we as a team care deeply about. So the first one is people first. We really believe that our work is all about people, and putting them at the center of everything is important. It's sometimes challenging in a world where, you have demands on KPIs and ROIs and what you're trying to leverage and accomplish and the impact, but always keeping the person at the center, whether that's about the people we're serving, working with our donors or our congregations, understanding that that's something that's really important to us. The second is investing in potential. So seeing what we believe is the full potential of somebody and being willing to take a chance on them, to spend the time and resources, enable them to be able to grow into that full potential. The third is that we believe we're stronger together, and that is at the core of how MAM was built. It was these 13 congregations saying, like, we have people coming and asking us for help. We want to help them, but we want to do it best. We don't want to, duplicate services or repeat the wheel. And we really think that if we come together, then we can both have more resources, but also a more effective program to serve. And so we really believe that we're stronger together. The fourth is that we believe in being good stewards. So those of you who've ever been volunteers with us or worked with us essentially in our programs know that we're I don't know if thrifty is the right word, but good stewards is, I think, a better way to say it. You know, we really try to use all the resources we can to have the impact in our community on families' lives. So, you know, if you come to our fundraisers, we're not the big fancy gala fundraiser. You know, when we think about, I mean, even ordering office supplies, we're first going to go in the back room of the warehouse to see if we have some donations. We really try to make sure that we, you know, use every resource that's brought to our table. And the same thing with the resource of people. So we try to be incredibly respectful of our volunteers who are dedicating their time, which often for them is one of the most precious resources and definitely a non-renewable one. And so we try to really create meaningful experiences that as best as we can are well organized and effective so that they also can have a great experience. And the last is that we're open to all. So, you know, often people hear, oh, we're a ministry. And so they have questions about, you know, what does that mean? And will we only serve people that are of a certain faith or that have a certain, you know, goal in their life? And MAM really is open to all. And I'm very proud. If you know our staff and our team, you'll see that we have incredible diversity. We're a really inclusive organization. And you see that really at all levels, you know, throughout our staff. And I think that's something that I'm really proud about, but also because I truly believe that it makes us the very strong organization that we are, because we have such a rich diversity of thoughts and perspectives that get brought into our work. Okay, so we believe this is so that was about our people. Now this is about our philosophy, that we believe in the potential of people. We think it's the courage of the hardworking families, and we think it has to, touch that there. Sorry about that. And it's the support of a caring community that really helps people to thrive. Many of you are a part of that strong, supportive, caring community that we have. And so there's a bunch of statements that we put together that we feel like help explain our philosophy of service. You know, we feel really proud, and there's always much work to be done, but in general, a lot of our work is promoted by word of mouth, and, you know, and it's because people feel like they're supported, they're treated with dignity when they come to MAM. I think that says a lot about ourselves. And so one of the questions is sort of like, what's behind that? How do we do that? So these are our, this is sort of our philosophy of service. So we think that we think of everyone as whole and capable and with inherent value. We say that opportunities may be broken or lost, but people are not. We know that we treat everyone with dignity and respect. Our approach to clients acknowledges that seeking help is actually an act of courage, not weakness. We know that families can be advocates for their own change. As I mentioned earlier, we really believe that they are the active drivers for their own plan towards stability and thriving. We see people, not programs, so our support's individualized. It's responsive to the unique needs and aspirations of every single person and family. We feel that everybody deserves a chance to thrive. Our success is measured by the overall improvement of how our clients experience their lives. And lastly, we appreciate volunteers and donors as part of our success. Like I said earlier, we really think we're stronger together. We need everybody who's a part of our community participating and giving back. And we believe that everybody benefits, you know, whatever your part is, when there's an integrative way of how we help, and that really has the impact on the families in our community that we all desire. And lastly, the programs. So our range of programs helps families remove stress, regain hope, and build skills in 3 key areas. We know that through our programs, we help families do more and go further than they can do alone. The 3 areas that we focus on are building a strong workforce, building financially stable families, and building healthy and supportive communities. So sometimes people are like, well, what does MAM actually do, right? And we start to talk about all the programs, but, you know, we run over 20 different programs. And so when you start, you know, mentioning, oh, well, we have mental health, and then we do financial coaching, and people just sort of glaze over. So we found that it's easier to kind of think about, like, what is the impact that our work has on the families, but also beyond that in our community. So the specific programs in these areas, and of course, you know, each of the programs has impacts way beyond these impact areas. But just for the sake of being able to think more concisely about them, building the strong workforce, the financially stable families, and healthy supportive communities. So in our strong workforce, we have employment services. If I remember correctly, they are on deck for the next Lunch and Learn, food for thought. And so you can come and hear from Bethlehem and our team about the work that they're doing in employment services. That's everything from job readiness, job coaching. We have an opportunity youth program where we work with young adults, an incredible, we have vocational services, everything from, phlebotomy, certified nurses aid. There's a lot going on there. So a really important program of ours. Literacy advanced services. So this is all of the literacy work that we're doing with adult learners. The core of that is our English classes. We have the largest volunteer taught English program in the region. I've challenged my team to find out if it's maybe even in the state, but it's not just a big program, it's a really great program. We have incredibly dedicated teachers, and we see the impact as students really do move forward in their knowledge of English as they go. Immigration and legal services is another part of our strong workforce. In financially stable families, we have financial assistance, kind of where MAM started, our bread and butter. We now also have financial empowerment, which includes financial coaching. It includes financial education programs and a new program we've just launched called Getting Ahead. And then personal resource development, which is helping folks to navigate the resources that are in existence in our community and use them in their pathway forward. And then last, disaster recovery assistance, which I would say are once again but I don't think we ever stopped being in this mode since Harvey. We've had Imelda, then we had the Watson chemical explosion, COVID, and now Winter Storm Uri. So we almost need a whole separate bucket just for disaster recovery these days. In healthy supportive communities, it's physical and mental health, it's community engagement work, community support, and the MAM resale. All right, so I'm looking at time, and I know I have to keep going. And Taylor flagged me when I'm, a few minutes out, and I can kind of truncate here. I think we started a minute or a couple late. But this is just kind of to think about this idea of helping people, right? And at the end of the day, that's what MAM is here for. But not all help is equal, and not all help actually helps. And so I put together this little illustration that to me helps articulate the different kinds of help and why it's really important to distinguish between them and know how and when to apply. So if you think of a person who's a place of stability and you're trying to get them to the end game, which is to be in a place of thriving where they can give back and they have, stability. And then a crisis happens, right? So maybe it's, Winter Storm Uri, right? What happens? Well, immediately, what do they need? The first stage of support is relief. So relief is immediate. It's right after a crisis. It's very short term. It's get them food, shelter, water, kind of work that we typically think of first aid doing, the Red Cross doing, George R. Brown, that sort of thing. But then right after that happens, right, what needs to happen? Well, then a next part of a help category comes in, which is recovery. Sometimes it's also known as rehabilitation, but it's the idea of how do we restore people back to where they were before. So whether that means, getting them a job because they lost it in the crisis, whether it means, getting them secure housing. But the idea is you're trying to get them back to this place. But again, it is a temporary form of help, just getting people back to that place. Then the next type of help is work in the form of development, right? Now, development is much more it's an ongoing, continuous way of building up stronger resources and resilience for people and for the community. So what falls into development is work, it's education work, it's, skill building work, and it can also be, this is not just about, it's not financial, it could be about people's spiritual health, it could be about their mental health, physical health, all kind of the similar things, right? So in this, before you even get to thriving, is this term self-sufficient that we talked about, and I'll break that down in a second. Well, I like to share with folks that, one thing that's really important and one thing we haven't often done well, especially in faith communities, and I mention that because of, MAM's identity with the faith communities, is very often we want to apply relief help to a situation that in reality needs development support, right? And distinguishing those are really important because providing handout type relief short-term support will never get to people to be in a place of self-sufficiency where they have agency and advocacy and can live their best life. The other thing that I think is important to take into consideration is that many of the folks we serve, quite honestly, they don't start in a place of stability. So this last assumption was based on the idea that you were stable before the crisis came, right? And in reality, many of the families that we serve, they were either born into or have lived for a significant period in a place of instability, right? So they may actually be, starting with less stability than folks who were stable and then went through a crisis. And in that case, it's really, really important that the work and the support that is there to support those individuals or families is development work. And when I say development, what does that mean? It means skill building. It means, building opportunities for other resource building. And I'll talk about that a little more in a second. And the other thing that we believe deeply at MAM is it's really important that our services are bundled. And bundled means that multiple services are being able to be provided to a family, coordinated in a way that the outcomes are greater. And so data and research shows that it's actually 3 to 4 times more effective when families received bundle services than if they just get like one-off help from one place or another. So I see Taylor's telling me I'm short on time, so I'm gonna roll through this. This is just kind of to see the spectrum of someone who's in a crisis moving to a place of stability, then on to self-sufficiency and thriving. So I think I heard this just recently on a podcast, and you all know they give the man a fish and you'll feed him for a day. And what I heard about these different types of help was relief is giving the man a fish. Development is teaching a man to fish. But empowerment, so even going beyond that, is teaching a man how to obtain equipment and where to find the ponds. And that ultimately justice is helping to tear down the fence around the pond. And so I say that to say that while MAM's work is sort of really more focused on the relief, development, and empowerment pieces of it, we believe it has to also be within a context of, of a just system, because otherwise all the work that we as an organization, that our families do, will hit a limit at some point if they don't have access to the resources and opportunities that they need. Okay, I'm gonna try to fly through this. This is, again, the dark blue, the darkest blue is the percentage of working poor, which is now called ALICE, so asset limited, income constrained, employed working poor, folks that live in these different areas. So in the 080, where we are with our main campus, 62% of our families are working poor. In kind of near North Side, in that eastern part of our service area and Acres Homes, it's between 70 and 78% of the families find themselves in that situation. So it's pretty significant, the need, and many of those just struggle on a daily basis to make ends meet. This is just a fascinating, Episcopal Health brought this out. As you get to know me, you'll know I'm kind of like a data geek, but I do put people first. It's to understand people and how to get our work done better. This is a life expectancy chart, and it shows in years, depending on what zip code you live in, what your life expectancy is. So I'm gonna just toggle back and forth between. So this is just based on income, right? And then here you can see the life expectancy, and it's a really powerful demonstration of the realities of the importance of stability for our families and how it impacts their lives way beyond just their pocketbook. Any of these slides can be available, let me know. Okay, so another one thing, affordable housing, right? So one interesting piece of data, and so I'll just go to this. Here's your food for thought question. How would your life be different if you had to spend 50% of your income on rent? And so while you think about that, I'll just let you know that the majority of families that come to us for financial assistance are spending more than 50% of their income on rent. In Harris County alone, it's at this point, maybe even more. Statistics prior to COVID and everything else, there was 250,000 people in the lowest income bracket that were having to spend more than 50% of their income on rent. Can you imagine the challenges to provide basic healthcare, education, transportation, and get ahead in your life? It's a challenge, right? And so in the Houston, greater Houston area, there's only 18% affordable housing, which means that housing where the people only have to spend 30% or less on housing, there's only availability for 18% of that population. So we have a major housing stock affordable housing issue. So anyway, all this to say, at MAM, we don't just think about that individual family, but we also have to understand deeply the community environment in which they live, which impacts their lives, right? So I'm going to be out of time. Let me just roll through and see if there's anyone else that I want to talk about. We support in a holistic way, which means it's not just about financial, but there's all these different resources. Many of you may, be able to look at this and say, oh yeah, my mental health right now is probably not as strong as it was a year ago, but maybe I've had more time and my relationships have changed, or, and it's this understanding that really all of these factors impact a family's ability to be stable and to move forward and to contribute to the community. And so we really look at people holistically, and we try to teach an opportunity for them also to engage their challenges from this perspective. And so the last question that I'll have, and then I'll open it to real Q&A, your real questions, is what do you think are the 3 key things that are essential to helping somebody move out of poverty? I love this picture because this is Chantel. Chantel just graduated from our recent CNA class, our first virtual CNA class. And the reason it's exciting to me is because prior to being at MAM, I worked in an organization that worked with a lot of folks that were either homeless or in transition out of homelessness. And I met Chantel at my previous organization when they were in transitional living with her family. And how exciting to see a few years later, her participating in MAM CNA, which really is setting up folks. We have graduates now that are getting jobs through Memorial Hermann with a strong living wage and full benefits. And it's absolutely life-changing. So I know her kids, Paige and Sanaya, and to be able to see it is this long journey, right? But if people stick with it and the resources available, it can make a big difference. Okay, so what do y'all think they are? Does anybody have, so are we, I guess we don't have chat. I'll just give you the answers. We'll see.
I was gonna say, there's a couple in chat, Sonja.
Oh, are there?
Jean said food, housing, and job skills. And Catherine said resources, support, and skills.
Yeah. Okay, so those are good. Those fit into this. The way I, think about it is relationships, right? So how do we get to those resources? How do we learn about them? How do we access them? How do we learn? How do we get it? Those sorts of things. Relationships are key in that, right? And that's something that's really important at MAM. Employment, so some form of, stable income, and education. And that was mentioned also with the skills. And so, MAM really provides opportunities for these resources to be made available to our community members that are looking to move forward in their lives. Anyway, this was just a fun thing about how who you spend your time with determines your knowledge. Left side, Asian family making dumplings. That's how I grew up. My husband's Mexican. I lived for a decade in a small town in Mexico. I learned how to make tamales there just from the time and being with the people. And so just a last reflection I'll leave you with, which is, if how you spend your time determines your knowledge, what does it mean for families who are spending time in places and in networks of people where they don't necessarily have access to a different way of viewing themselves, to different resources, to different educational opportunities, and how can we be the social capital to bridge them over? Won't go into that. Anyway, so thank you all for that, for being here, and I'm open now. I think Taylor is going to guide us through. I'm going to go ahead and close my share screen.
Well, we didn't get any questions in the chat, which is, you had lots of great information, so I'm sure everybody was just listening. So if you guys have a question and you want to throw it in the chat, feel free to, or go ahead and unmute yourself and just ask, and everyone can learn from whatever great questions you have for us or for Sonja. Don't be shy. I know nobody ever likes to be the first person to go. Or maybe it was so informative you've learned, what is the mental health support you provide? Great question, Jean.
Yeah, that's a great question. So MAM has a mental health counseling department. We have 2 full-time mental health counselors, and then we have a few part-time also counselors. We provide services in English, in Spanish, and in Farsi. And the reason for Farsi, like I mentioned, we really, deeply try to understand the needs in our community and respond to them. And so in our West Campus, there's a really large Persian community, and that's been a really great resource for that. The type of, it's mental health counseling, it tends to be short-term, mostly around, issues of, I don't know, sorry, the technical terms of it. You'd have to talk to Eddie, he's our counselor, but it's a lot of kind of short-term intervention, not long-term therapy. So what they'll do is they'll work with people for a certain period of time. And if it turns out that somebody needs long-term support, then they'll be able to pass them off onto somebody else. But in many, many cases, for a lot of our clients, they're just dealing with a significant amount of stress, anxiety, depression, and our counselors are really able to help them take enough of a step in those areas to be able to then engage in the other things they're trying to accomplish in their life. That was a great question.
Wonderful. Okay, Electra wanted to ask, how much training do volunteers need to assist in various programs?
Okay, that's a great question. So I would just say the answer is it varies. There are roles at MAM where you can show up tomorrow, as long as you fill out your forms. And there is work you can do and you will get on the job training. And then there's other jobs that quite honestly do take a significant amount of training. So I would say, there's a range. If you want to come, work in our resale store, you can become a cashier there, you can sort stuff in the back. But that may be different than, we have folks who are job coaches. Well, in many cases, the folks who are our volunteer job coaches, they have a background in their, business or corporate experience where they've done that. And so they kind of can jump right in. Whereas we may have, people interested in becoming an ESL teacher, so an English second language teacher, and it may be something they've never done before, but they want to give back. And so we do have, extensive training and support available to them. And they go through a period where they kind of either shadow or complement another teacher before they are given the reins to do that. So, it's quite a range, and it just depends on what area you want to work in.
Okay. Jill also said, what other than CNA, what other trainings do you offer and how much do the services cost?
Okay, so we, Ken is on here, so he may be able to correct me if I get any of this wrong, but we have offered different types of vocational services, including administrative assistant, phlebotomy, CNA. We're about to start later this year an EKG training. Am I missing one, Ken? I know we do customer service training.
Ken, you're muted. If you want to unmute yourself.
Ken's part of our employment services team, and none of these services have a cost to our participants. Essentially at MAM, I think the only services we provide where we do charge any fees at all is our immigration and legal services. And that's really to offset the cost of the program, but it still makes it a much more affordable option than going to, another attorney. But other than that, all of the services, and in our ESL classes, people do have to pay just like a books and registration fee. But other than that, everything that we offer to the community is free to the community. Okay, Ken, go. Ken.
Yeah, the only other thing that, not the only other thing, but forklift operator training, security guard training, and we're actually going to be starting something in our youth program to help the kids get a driver's license, because that can often be a barrier to getting a job. And those, other than the ones that you've already mentioned, pretty much cover it. Always in the outlook, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Always thinking about, and, like one thing that I'm kind of excited about is, we're looking into piloting soft skill and like kind of career pathway, access to support through a digital learning base. So that's something that we kind of have in conversations or hoping to pilot soon. We've got a lot of things kind of in the pipeline that we're hoping to continue expanding. But certainly, we're also always looking for, businesses that want to hire our graduates and, can help us continue to develop our network in that area. So if you all know folks in that, love to have any connections there that can help.
Okay. Michael asked, how are you handling ESL classes currently?
So we currently are hosting all of our ESL classes virtually through Zoom. We are in the process right now of building in new infrastructure at MAM that's going to allow us to do hybrid classes where, because there is quite honestly, an impact for our community because of digital divide issues, which is everything from people don't have reliable internet at home, they don't have the devices that they need. They may be able to use a phone, but it's not the same for learning. They don't have a computer or a tablet. And in some cases, in many cases, we hear also that people just don't have a quiet, private space where they can sit and concentrate and learn. And so part of the gift for them of coming into MAM and taking classes was to have that time for their own personal development, but also, if they live in a household that has, several families or mixed families in a small living environment, sometimes that can be really challenging. And so we're excited that in a few months, we will be able to pilot our very first classes that will be hybrid. Some of our students that have the capacity can connect by Zoom, and others will actually be in the classroom and they'll be in that class together.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Bill asked, how could he get a copy of the PowerPoint? And then just so we'll end on time, we have about 2 minutes. So any final questions, either from the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask Sonja yourself.
This is Jill Emery with St. Andrew Lutheran. My question would be, we have a daycare that we're sometimes in need of teachers, or right now we're looking for a bus driver with a commercial license for some small work. So is that something we could work with MAM?
Absolutely, that'd be fantastic. And
Most
Jill
definitely.
would love it if you would connect with us after this meeting. In fact, we just had a conversation, just a week or two ago with Bethlehem about commercial driver's license, the different types that we would offer, and seeing that as a viable option because, Waste Management and a couple other businesses have reached out with a similar, interest. So we'd love to talk with you more about that. And that's absolutely the type of relationship that we want to continue building with different, schools, congregations, businesses in our community.
And who do I need to reach out to?
So Bethlehem would be the right person. I think that Taylor can, in private text, maybe send you that email address.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll send that to you, Jill.
Thank you.
Last call, anybody else?
Hi, my name is Peter. I'm just a volunteer at the ESL store in the back rooms, cleaning and testing electrical equipment. I've been doing it for 3.5 years, about 20 hours a week. And thank you very much for doing this today, because I never understood why the hell I'm back there, just stuffing all these things on the shelves and never seeing where all this stuff goes. But I understand this. But I'm just a very small cog in a very large wheel. So thank you for doing this today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter. I love that because our world and our community is made of lots of small cogs, and if they're all running in the same direction, it's just incredible what we can do. And I think that's what's so wonderful about MAM. You may be thinking, oh, I'm just testing out this electronics or pricing this, or maybe you're just buying stuff in our resale store. Everybody's contribution matters, and it allows us to have the impact that we have. In this last year, we were able to provide over $10 million worth of services and support to our community, and that is just astounding. And every single person is a part of that, whether it's because you've shared MAM with your neighbor, or whether it's because you're a volunteer of ours, or and absolutely, it's the most incredible factor is the families and the incredible resilience and determination that they have to improve their lives, to allow other people into their lives as they're going through difficult times. And then in many cases for them coming back and giving back, not just to us directly at MAM, but to our whole community and making it a better place. All right, well, I think we said we would have you out of here by 12:45. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate each one of you, and certainly open to have more questions and connections. We hope you will join us for the next Food for Thought. It's the month of it is, let's see, this was the February one, so it should be in April, I guess.
April 21st. And to follow along, mamhouston.org/food for thought. You can stay tuned with everything we have going on there. And our website is also a great place to get additional information about other events that we have coming up that might be interesting to you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon.